what explains most of the variation in crime rates are law enforcement. Higher arrest rates, higher conviction rates, longer prison sentences, the death penalty explain over half of the variation that you see in crime rates over time and across places. And so if you want to go and deal with this, you want to make it riskier for criminals to go and commit crimes. And I agree with you that that's going to be the result. Now, there are some things that Trump's already done that's helped reduce crime across the country. One of them has been deporting illegal aliens, particularly emphasizing those who have criminal records.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz, and today we're joined by Dr. John Lott, Jr., one of the most respected and controversial voices in the gun policy debate. His seminal work, I highly recommend, More Guns, Less Crime, and he's also founder of the Crime Prevention Research Center. Really thrilled to have you back on here, John. I saw you at Freedom Fest this summer. It was great to bump into you. I should say last summer. And, well, we got some things going on here. It looks like even the left doesn't believe that if more guns, if they belong to the National Guard and more policemen, that's going to bring down crime. What we're talking about, obviously, is President Trump federalizing the D.C. Police Department, which he can do by the 1973 Home Rule Act that gave D.C. limited ability to rule its own affairs, which we see how wonderful that has worked out. And he's called in 800 guardsmen and roving bands of FBI, DEA agents. Like, I can't even picture, John, like a FBI agent doing a traffic stop. Right. You know, like, they don't know how to do that, but just their presence probably is making a big difference, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, it's not rocket science about what's going on. If you want to lower crime, you have to make it more costly, riskier for criminals to go and commit crimes. You can do that with higher arrest rates, which putting more people on the street is surely going to help with that. More prosecutions and actually punishing people. And maybe one can also add letting victims be able to go and defend themselves. But, you look at what the situation was just before Trump got involved. You have about 400 or so patrol officers on duty at most at any point in time in D.C. That's 400 people to go and protect 721,000 people out there. That's asking a lot. And I think the police unions were right there saying that they were stretched incredibly thin. Plus, there were all sorts of other restrictions that are there. So the first night that Trump rolled out his new policy there, they added another 820 officers on the street, law enforcement people on the street. That's, essentially treble the enforcement effort that they had before. That's a huge change that's there. And, with regard to prosecutions, prosecutions of adults are handled by the U.S. Attorney for D.C. And during Biden, the person that was there, was just refusing to prosecute cases of the arrests in 2022. The guy refused to actually prosecute 67% of the arrests. In 2023, he still refused to prosecute 55% of the arrests that were there. And even the ones that they prosecuted, it was often for very reduced penalties. And so, you're not arresting people. The people that you are arresting, you're not prosecuting. It's just crazy. And of course, there's the police union has been pushing hard on this scandal, saying that the city has been kind of corrupting the crime data there, kind of reclassifying what would have been a felony as a misdemeanor in order for it not to be included in the FBI data. So like taking aggravated assaults and reclassifying them as simple assaults. And so, there are lots of problems that are there. But, one thing, it's more difficult to hide as murder data. In 2023, of the 60 most populous cities in the United States, D.C. ranked 5th in terms of murder rates.
They weren't trying hard enough,
Right.
So number one at one time, right?
Yeah, well, they were at one time.
It sounds like the prosecutor went to the George Soros School of Crime Prevention, right?
Well, it's not too shocking. I mean, given that he was a Biden appointee there. But you're right. They make the similar types of things in other places where you have George Soros prosecutors. Alvin Bragg in New York City, in Manhattan, one of the things that he's been known for has been refusing to prosecute criminals for firearms offenses. What makes a difference between something being aggravated assault, which is a felony, and simple assault, which is a misdemeanor, is whether or not a weapon was involved. And so if they're refusing to prosecute these individuals as firearms offenses, they lower these cases from felonies to misdemeanors. And then they put pressure on the police not to initially record of whether a firearm was used in the offense, because prosecutors don't want to take the full blame for kind of reducing the penalties for these cases. And so what happens is that Manhattan then under-records the number of violent crimes that are there, and it kind of messes up the FBI data because the FBI relies on that.
Yeah, well, during Giuliani, I remember there was a commander that fudged the numbers at one of the precincts, and they fired that guy almost instantaneously. He might have been an inspector, whoever they have at the major precincts. They have a high-ranking police official running it. He lied. They fired him on the spot. Bratton went there and took his badge. And where is Bratton when you need him?
Right. Well, I mean, because the police unions in D.C. made such a stink about it, in July, the person was suspended there, but he hasn't been fired yet. But, something needs to be done. And it's just the media bias in terms of discussing all this has been just kind of outrageous. They'll go and mention that these official crime numbers have gone down the last few years, but in many cases, they're still very high compared to what they were prior to COVID. You look at carjackings, which is one of the things that kind of got this going when the former Dodge official was attacked. In 2023, there were 969 of these carjackings that had occurred. 2024, it was down to like 495, but that's still, so they say, look, it's falling, but that's still 5 times higher than what it was in 2017 and 2018 before COVID. And so, then it was kind of in the 90s that you had these numbers. And so, the fact checkers in the media say, well, Trump's wrong about it being up compared to 5 years ago. They don't mention the 5 years. They just go and say, it's fallen. And just look at the last 2 years.
It's like inflation numbers. If we tracked inflation the way we did in the 80s, it would be double the rate that it is now. But when you don't like the results, you just use a different ruler. I remember there were some shady personal injury lawyers in New York, and they would take pictures of holes in the ground that supposedly their clients tripped over, and they had a custom-made ruler that said it was 12 inches long, but it was only 8 inches long.
Oh, fine.
This is the kind of thing when you go changing everything around, this is what happens. So hopefully we're going to see a major drop in crime. I can't see how we can't see it. And if Trump really does turn DC into a showcase, what does that say to all the other blue cities that are failing, like your Detroit's? Detroit's better than it was, but it's still unacceptable, like New York, like Philly, Baltimore especially, that's going to make them look really bad. Just like the libs said that couldn't stop the people coming over the border, the invasion over the border, and Trump did it in a week. Can't stop the crime because you got to get to the basis of crime because, he had a tough toilet training, Johnny, and therefore he became a serial killer. I mean, it's insane. And yet we're going to see a historic drop in crime. I almost guarantee you, because he will feed as many people into that inferno as he needs to stop it. And then when he stops it, what do they say then? Well, it really wasn't that bad, John. Like murders were already down 30%. He only fixed what was already being fixed, right?
Yeah. Look, I mean, you're exactly right on all the points that you raise. I was going to raise, in fact, also the point that I think this could have an impact across the country. Constituencies are going to say, look, this worked here. Why don't we do the same things? There's a lot of academic work. I've done some of this myself. When you look at things like income and poverty and unemployment, those only explain 1% to 2% of the variation in crime rate. What explains most of the variation in crime rates are law enforcement. Higher arrest rates, higher conviction rates, longer prison sentences, the death penalty explain over half of the variation that you see in crime rates over time and across places. And so if you want to go and deal with this, you want to make it riskier for criminals to go and commit crimes. And I agree with you that that's going to be the result. Now, there are some things that Trump's already done that's helped reduce crime across the country. One of them has been deporting illegal aliens, particularly emphasizing those who have criminal records. And that does it in two ways. One is it's removed some of these criminals from the country, but even the ones that they haven't caught, it's affected because they know that if they get arrested, they'll be deported. And one way to reduce the probability of being arrested is to try to stay off police radars. And the way you stay off police radars is not to commit crimes right now. And so I think it's had an impact both in terms of removing criminals and also causing other criminals to kind of keep their heads down right now. So I think they've already had some beneficial impact, but hopefully this will kind of educate people, just as you say correctly, educating people about the border.
Hey, I'm sure it's having a big impact on Home Depot parking lots for sure.
It's easier to pull in there, I guess, now.
So one thing, John, let's go back to Giuliani, because he was really the test case that proved that through effective policing, enforcing minor laws, the so-called broken windows theory of policing, that you can effectuate huge declines, generational declines in crime. And what did they say? They said, well, it was demographic because the number of lawbreakers, that 16 or 15 to 24 demographic, the number of them had gone down dramatically. As somebody who was in New York City during the term of David Dinkins, seeing crime exploding and then watching it go all but disappear in many parts of the city, I know that to be a lie.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, Giuliani famously proved the point, and he educated people around the country, and you had a number of police departments kind of go and follow the rule. I mean, it's an idea that James Q. Wilson, for the famous criminologist, unfortunately, who's no longer with us, put out there that, if you make it so that a place is more livable, people will be outside more. You'll have more witnesses. You'll make it more difficult for criminals to go and commit crime. And that's the policy that they did. And they moved, one of the other things they did is they moved the police to places where crime was. Every morning, they would go and see where were the crimes occurring last night. And they would go then and move the police there. The criminals can move someplace else, but they'd follow them. And they just make life very difficult for the for the criminals, and they had a huge impact on the crime rate. Unfortunately, the current leader in the mayor's race in D.C., the Democrat nominee, wants to continue undoing the work that was done.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was another program that he had that I think it was a cop who once told me it was called Life in Jail a Day at a Time. And that meant that they knew you were going to get kicked out of jail for these minor quality of life offenses like, public relieving, urination, that type of thing. But nonetheless, they still arrested you smoking in the subway. You'd get arrested, you'd spend the day in jail, you'd get out, and then you'd do it again, and they'd arrest you again, or dealing marijuana on the street. And an amazing thing happened. They stopped doing it after a while. After spending, day after day after day in jail, they stopped doing it. And the whole thing of disincentives, carrot and stick, it made a huge difference. And the other thing, John, that happened during that whole Giuliani period, economic expansion, because people felt safe to go outside, even in the poorer areas, and more people working as a result of that economic expansion and less of them turning to crime. I saw it with my own eyes.
Yeah. Kerry, you're exactly right. People don't appreciate, obviously you have the direct victims of crime, but you also have all these other indirect effects that are there. So if I have more crime in an area, I'm going to have businesses close down. The ones that stay in business are going to have higher costs. That hurts so many different people. People who would lose their jobs. People who would have gone shopping in those areas now have to go farther away to be able to go and shop. People who own businesses lost money. People who owned homes in those areas. What do you think happened to the property values for those homes when crime rates went up in those areas? You make those people poor as a result of that. You make them lose their jobs. So people are harmed in many different ways from crime that I don't think is properly appreciated.
It's disgusting that the liberals won't give Giuliani credit for what he did there. And Giuliani, we didn't know it at the time because the only thing he had ever run was the U.S. Attorney's Office, but he turned out to be an incredibly effective manager of the city's workforce. And he had the Democrat council going against him, and yet he managed to make deals and get things done. Hopefully we'll see that again. Hey, we're going to cover tariffs real briefly. Tariffs seem to be working. They don't seem to be causing inflation, at least according to the measurable numbers. China, that deal keeps getting put off 90 days. I think the reason why that isn't really publicized, China's having an economic collapse, and the United States cannot afford to be seen as literally piling on and basically enhancing that collapse, even though it might be in our best interest for it to be occurring.
Right. So, I just had a piece, just so people know, I have a PhD in economics. I've been an academic most of my life. I've had positions at Stanford, University of Chicago, the Wharton Business School, Yale, UCLA. And I've written about 120 peer-reviewed articles, including issues like trade. So I have some background in this area. And what I didn't even appreciate until recently myself is that, the arguments against tariffs are that they're going to distort trade, hurt consumers, reduce production. All those things are true. But that's true of all taxes. Sales taxes reduce trade.
They're deflationary. Taxes are deflationary.
Income taxes make it so that people don't work as much. They're not selling their labor as much as they would have otherwise. It reduces investment. Corporate taxes reduce output, reduce investment. So all taxes are distortionary. And one thing that's important to understand is that the size of the distortion increases at an increasing rate with the level of taxes. So a 20% tax produces more than twice the distortion that a 10% tax does. And so what you need to do as an economist, because we're going to have taxes, we may want to cut the federal budget, but even if we succeed in cutting it a lot, it's still going to have to have taxes to pay for things. You have a situation where, you're going to want to try to make it so that the distortions are minimized. And so if I have a tariff of 2.5% that's there, and the income taxes, when you add this average state tax there, goes up to 43%. And for corporate taxes, federal and state, are 27% on average. You have much bigger distortions in those other areas. And so, it may make sense to increase to some extent the tariff at the same time you're reducing those other taxes. And what Trump has done, combined with the budget reconciliation bill, kind of accomplishes that to some extent. Now, what the right amount is, I don't know. Now, just as a quick comment on the inflation, I guess I'm a Milton Friedman type monetary theory type guy, and that is basically inflation is a monetary phenomenon. If you're not changing the money supply and velocity, then if some prices go up, other prices are going to have to go down, so that on average, the total amount spent is going to be the same. So I may have taxes on particular items that causes those prices to go up a little bit, but it's not inflationary. It's not going to change the overall price level as long as the money supply is not changing.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. And I am a free trade person through and through, but free trade's been weaponized against the United States post-World War II. Maybe in the beginning, initial phases, there was reasons. There was no reason to allow China to weaponize trade. That's what they've done. Tariffs are the great equalizer. Prior to the creation of the Federal Reserve and the income tax, the government financed all of its operations through tariffs and excise taxes on alcohol and I guess some on tobacco, perhaps. But, part of the problem with prohibition was it took away that revenue source from the government, and it became the justification for the income tax. So, you're looking at it, it's a tax, yes, but like you said, all taxes are deflationary because they have the crowding out effect. They take from those who produce and give to those who don't produce. And that's the whole mess that we're in now. John, where's the best place to find you these days and connect with you on the web?
Well, our website is crimeresearch.org, crimeresearch.org.
All right. And the link is in the show notes to this interview. If you've got a question for John, myself, shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. John, we will talk to you again soon. Thanks for that great article. Be well.
It's been great talking to you. Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.